For 600 years, the galaxy knew only one thing: war. The Crax Dominion and the Velatari Ascendancy were two of the oldest and most powerful empires in known space. Once, long ago, they had been allies. But something, nobody remembers, what, started a fight that never ended. Now, entire generations had been born and died with war as their only reality. Every star system between the two empires had seen battle. Planets were turned to ash, moons shattered, space itself was full of wreckage and ghosts. Peace was a forgotten word. The Crax believed they were the chosen rulers of the galaxy. Their leaders claimed their bloodline gave them the right to control everything. They built massive fleets, strong armies, and weapons that could crack continents. The Velatari, in contrast, followed ancient laws and traditions. They believed in honor and legacy, but they too were ruthless when it came to war. Their warships were sleek, fast, and deadly. Their warriors were trained from childhood to fight without fear. Both sides believed the other was evil. Both thought they were fighting for justice. But over time, the war became something else. It became a habit. No one remembered the cause, but they remembered the losses. A Crax admiral once said, "We fight because if we stop, everything we lost will be for nothing." A Velatari commander replied, "We cannot let our ancestors be forgotten by ending what they died for." And so, the war went on. Every few years someone tried to make peace. There were treaties, meetings, secret talks. But each time someone broke the deal. A planet would be bombed, a fleet would vanish. Then the killing would begin again, worse than before. Spies, sabotage, betrayal. It became part of normal life. Soldiers were raised not just to kill but to hate. Civilians learned to run at the sound of engines overhead. Hope was something you told your children, not something you believed. Then came the whispers, rumors of a third force. In the outer systems, far from the warfront, something strange had happened. A small mining colony reported seeing a new kind of ship, black, silent, and fast. It didn't attack, it only watched. The miners tried to contact it, but there was no reply. Then it vanished into the void. The incident was buried in reports ignored by both empires. After all, it wasn't a threat. Not yet. But then, more sightings came in. Patrols vanished in empty space. Satellites showed flashes of movement they couldn't explain. A Velatari scout found a destroyed Crax listening post, but there were no signs of battle, just clean cuts, melted steel, and silence. The few who saw the strange ships and survived began to speak of the ghosts. Black ships with no markings. They did not respond to threats. They did not run. They only watched. And sometimes, things disappeared after they left. The empires sent more scouts. Nothing. The ghosts were gone. The war continued. For most, it was just another myth, some trick from the enemy to cause fear. But deep inside the war councils, worry began to grow. They didn't say it out loud, but they all wondered the same thing. What if someone new was watching? Then one day a signal came. Not from Crax space, not from Velatari. From a system both sides had forgotten, Sul. The origin point was a small blue planet called Earth. The message was short. Translated into both languages, it said, "End your war. You have 3 days." At first, no one believed it. Earth was considered a primitive system. It had no empire, no known power. Just a quiet world far from the center of the galaxy. Crax leaders laughed. The Velatari called it a joke. Some thought it was a test by the other side. Still, the message kept playing. It repeated itself every hour. "End your war. You have 3 days." On the second day, the Crax sent a scout fleet to Earth's system just to show force. 20 ships, including a dreadnought. The fleet never returned. No message, no wreckage, just gone. The Velatari sent a drone to observe. The drone arrived near the Sol system and recorded something terrifying. Dozens of massive ships floating still in space. Each one was dark and smooth with no lights, no signals. They made no move. But the drone caught one image before it was shut down, a symbol, glowing faintly on one ship's hull. It was a human hand, open, reaching out, or preparing to strike. That image spread through the command networks of both empires like fire. Soldiers, officers, even high generals stared at it and felt something they hadn't felt in years: fear. The countdown ended. 3 days were up. And then the humans came. The warning had been clear. End your war. You have 3 days. But no one listened. The Crack's Dominion laughed. Their High Lord called the message a prank. Let the insects bark, he said. We will crush them like dust. He sent a scout fleet 20 ships strong to the Sol system. The Velatari Ascendancy, more cautious, waited and watched. But when the Crack's fleet disappeared without a sound, even they grew nervous. No wreckage returned, no distress signal. The fleet had simply vanished. For the first time in centuries, both empires paused. Not for peace, for fear. In a hidden war, room deep beneath the Crack's capital, advisors spoke in whispers. What kind of power could erase a dreadnought fleet in seconds? Someone asked. No one had an answer. The High Lord ordered silence. We are the Dominion, he growled. We do not fear shadows. Meanwhile, the Velatari Council gathered in their crystal towers. Their spy master showed them footage from the last drone. The image of the black ship, the glowing human hand, shone on every screen. The council elder spoke softly. This is not a new empire. This is something ancient, something cold. Still, most Velatari commanders believed it was a trick. Perhaps the Cracks had made the story up to scare them. Perhaps Earth was just a lost world with old tech and bold words. But then more reports came in. From far systems, from silent zones no one watched anymore. A Velatari patrol ship found a Crack's outpost, completely empty. The walls were melted from the inside. No bodies, no blood. Just a strange burn mark shaped like a circle with 5 lines, 5 fingers. The same hand. The humans didn't speak, again. They sent no messages, they made no demands, they simply waited and watched. Then a small ship entered neutral space. It was small, barely larger than a fighter. No weapons, no shields, just a smooth silver surface and a signal repeating in binary. We are here. Both empires tried to intercept it. Crack's destroyers fired warning shots. The ship vanished, not exploded, just disappeared from sensors like it was never there. Velatari scouts tried to scan it. Their systems shut down. One ship's computer began to speak in a strange voice. It said, 3 hours left. Panic spread quietly. Officers gave orders without looking people in the eye. Commanders who had never feared anything now hesitated before sending ships into the unknown. But the war still burned. On the border world of Velkesh, a major battle was beginning. Cracks and Velatari forces clashed as they always had, for territory, honor, and revenge. The skies were full of fire. Soldiers died in the mud, screaming names they barely remembered. Then, everything stopped. Above the battlefield, without warning, a single black human ship appeared. It didn't fire, it didn't speak, it just hovered. Both sides stared at it. Some soldiers dropped their weapons, others prayed. The human ship remained still for 5 full minutes, and then it moved. Fast. Too fast to track. It flew straight, over the Crack's command post. When it passed, the building simply collapsed. No explosion, no flames. Just gone. The Velatari troops, thinking they were next, ran. But the ship didn't touch them. Instead, it circled the battlefield once, then flew into the clouds and vanished. After that, no one dared to attack. The fighting stopped. News spread across both empires like lightning. Some believed the humans were testing them. Others said they were sending a warning. A few thought it was already too late. On the 3rd day, another message came. This time it was live. A human face appeared on every screen across both empires. The man looked calm, not angry. His voice was flat. Cold, empty. You did not listen. Now we will act. And just like that, the message ended. Every ship, every station, every leader froze. Even the most hardened warlords felt something they had never felt before. The end. The war that had lasted 6 centuries was about to meet something even older, even stronger. Something that didn't care about glory, pride, or history. Something human. The sky over the neutral zone was quiet. Too quiet. For centuries it had been the heart of the war, a place filled with smoke, wreckage, and blood. But now, both the Cracks and Velatari fleets had pulled back. They watched from a distance, waiting, afraid to make the first move. No one said it out loud, but they all felt it. The humans were coming, and then they did. At exactly the same moment, across more than 50 systems, the stars changed. One by one, black ships appeared. No lights, no markings, no sound. Just long, sharp shadows sliding through space like ghosts. They didn't jump in with bright flashes like other ships. They didn't send warnings. They simply arrived. The Velatari ships tried to scan them. Every system failed. Their computers froze. Some overheated. One command ship exploded without being touched. The Cracks tried to lock weapons. Nothing happened. Targeting systems refused to work. Missiles would not launch. Turrets stayed frozen in place. Panic began to spread. In orbit above Velkesh, a Cracks general ordered a full attack. "Fire everything!" he shouted. "Show them our strength!" His fleet obeyed. Hundreds of plasma beams, rockets, and energy waves flew toward the black ship floating in the center of their formation. None of it hit. The black ship moved once. A soft pulse of blue light rippled from its center, and every weapon fired at it vanished. Not blocked, not deflected, vanished, as if they were never there. Then the human ship responded. It fired no missiles. Instead, a strange wave spread from it, silent and invisible to the eye. The Cracks ships began to shut down. Engines died. Lights flickered. Oxygen systems failed. The general ship split in half with a soft hiss like paper torn by wind. No fire, no explosion, just silence. The Velatari, watching from a distance, gave the order to retreat. But it was already too late. In another system near the Velatari homeworld, 5 black ships hovered over the capital's defense ring. The Velatari launched fighters, desperate to hold them back. The fighters never reached the target. They spun in circles, lost control, and dropped from the sky like stones. One pilot survived and sent a final message. "They're inside our minds." In 3 hours, more than 300 major military targets were destroyed. But not all were destroyed the same way. Some exploded without reason. Some melted from the inside. Some were simply gone, not a trace left. The strange part, no civilians were harmed. No cities were touched. No hospitals, no schools, just war machines, just command centers, just weapons. The message was clear. You chose war. Now we are ending it. Aboard one of the human ships, no one celebrated. The humans inside were cold, quiet, and focused. These were not conquerors. These were not saviors. They were enforcers. They were here for one reason, to stop the war, no matter the cost. At the edge of the Cracks Empire, an old admiral named Varun watched the black ships pass over a fleet he had led for 40 years. They didn't fire. They didn't speak. But every ship in his fleet powered down. Varun looked around his dark command deck and whispered, "This is what defeat looks like." The Velatari Council, in a hidden chamber under their burning capital, sent a last message. "We surrender. We accept peace." The humans didn't reply, but the black ships above them turned and left. By the end of the 3rd hour, the war was over. 600 years of death and destruction had ended. Not through talks, not through treaties, but by fear, by silence, by the terrifying power of a force that didn't want land or power, only peace. And as the black ships disappeared into the darkness once more, Every being across the galaxy asked the same question. What happens now? For the first time in 6 centuries, there were no battles in space. No fleets clashing, no explosions shaking the stars. Just silence. A deep, heavy silence that made everyone uneasy. The war was over, but no one was celebrating. The black, human ships had vanished just as suddenly as they came. One moment they filled the skies, and the next they were gone. Not a single one remained. No messages, no demands, nothing. Only the memory of what they had done. Across both the Crack's dominion and the Velatari ascendancy, people looked up at the stars with fear. Was it really over? Or was this just the beginning of something worse? On the Velatari homeworld, Council Elder Soraya walked through the ruins of the defense tower. The tower had been taken apart without fire, walls melted like wax, weapons gone without a trace. And yet the people inside had survived. The humans had spared them. She stood in the middle of the empty command hall and whispered, "They could have ended us. But they didn't." Why? Far away, on the Crack's capital world, High Lord Brenzek sat alone in his throne chamber. His guards were gone, his advisors had fled. Only silence kept him company. He watched the last transmission from one of their fleets where a human ship had disabled 50 Crack's warships in under 2 minutes. The ships didn't explode. They just stopped moving, as if the universe had pressed pause. Brenzek growled. "They did not fight like warriors. They erased us like we were insects." But deep inside, he knew they hadn't come to conquer. They came to warn. Across the galaxy, confusion turned into questions. Who were the humans, really? How did they get this kind of power? Last anyone knew, Earth had been a small, quiet world with little influence. Their species had barely reached the outer edge of known space. But somewhere in the shadows, they had changed. Historians scrambled to search old records. Scientists studied the energy patterns left behind. Soldiers tried to understand how they had lost so quickly. Nothing made sense. Human ships didn't match any known technology. Their weapons weren't weapons at all. They were systems that broke the very rules of physics. And still, no answers came. In the ruins of a neutral colony, a small group of Cracks and Velatari soldiers met. They had once tried to kill each other. Now they sat around a fire, quietly sharing food and stories. One Velatari soldier named Kale said, "Maybe they weren't here to fight us. Maybe they were testing us." A Cracks officer replied, "Testing? Us for what?" Kale looked up at the stars. "To see if we could learn." News spread that humans had sent no ambassadors. No fleets remained behind. No messages followed. But in several cities, Cracks, Velatari, and even old neutral colonies, strange structures were found. Smooth black towers, tall and silent. No doors, no windows. They hummed with quiet energy. Some feared them, others worshipped them. But no, one could enter them. Scholars stood outside the towers trying to make sense of them. One tower near the old battlefield of Velkesh pulsed once when a child placed their hand on it. No adult could trigger the same response. People began to wonder, were these towers a message, a promise, or a warning? Without war, both empires began to fall apart. Their governments had been built for battle, not peace. Generals had no enemies to fight. War factories stood silent. Propaganda stations had nothing to say. And still, the humans did not return. A slow fear crept into the hearts of the galaxy. Not the fear of death, but the fear of judgment. Everyone knew the truth, they had been spared, and they didn't know why. In a quiet research base on the edge of known space, an old Velatari scientist named Dr. Arvin watched the black sky from a telescope. He had been studying the human energy signature since the day of the attack. Every night, he wrote the same note in his journal, "They're still watching." One evening, his sensors picked up a small signal. It was weak, almost like a heartbeat. It came from the far side of the galaxy, near a system long abandoned. Arvin played the signal back again and again. It was a single word, repeated over and over in binary code. Prepare. He sat in silence, heart pounding. Prepare for what? As the galaxy stood still, frozen between fear and curiosity, only one thing was certain. The humans had not left. They had just stepped back. And the galaxy was now living in the space between judgment and whatever came next. Weeks passed. The war had stopped, but the fear had not. Across the galaxy, the black towers stood tall and silent. No one knew how many there were. Some appeared overnight. Others were found hidden deep underground, as if they had always been there. They gave off a soft hum like they were alive, waiting. At first, the cracks tried to destroy one. They sent a missile from orbit. The missile disappeared mid-air, as if it had been swallowed. The tower didn't even move. Later, soldiers were sent in with drills and scanners. None came back. The last message received was a whisper, filled with static. It sees us. After that, no one tried again. On the Velatari side, scientists were more careful. They watched the towers from a distance. They noticed something strange. Animals stayed away. The wind always changed near the towers. Some machines refused to work around them. And sometimes, only sometimes, people heard voices. Not loud. Not angry, just whispers. Like thoughts that weren't their own. One young Velatari girl touched the surface of a tower. It didn't harm her. In fact, it lit up, just for a moment. Her parents were terrified. The tower dimmed again, but the girl spoke clearly, calmly, in a voice that was not hers. This world can still be saved. People started calling the towers judgment pillars. Across both empires, everything had changed. Generals resigned. War factories were shut down. Propaganda stations aired silence. There were no enemies left to fight. The humans had ended the war, but they had left something behind. A question, a test, a silent watcher in every world touched by war. In a small, Velatari village, a former soldier named Kale lived quietly. He had seen the black ships up close. He couldn't sleep anymore. Every night he dreamed of the same thing, standing alone before a giant door made of light. The door never opened, but every night the voice behind it said the same thing. Do you understand yet? Kale didn't. But he was trying. On a broken cracks mining colony, a strange event happened. One of the towers began to hum louder than before. Lights moved up and down its sides like a signal. Then something floated out from the top, something small, a sphere. It hovered in the air for a moment, then floated toward the colony's control center. The cracks engineers panicked, but their commander ordered them to stand down. Let it pass, he said. We are not the ones in control anymore. The sphere entered the control room. It floated in the air for 2 minutes, then vanished. But when it left, every machine in the colony was working again. Better than before. Systems that had been broken for years came back to life. Power flowed like new. The message was clear. Cooperation would be rewarded. The humans hadn't just ended the war. They were reshaping the galaxy. And still, no one had seen a human face since the day of the message. Then, in the neutral zone, something new happened. A ship appeared. It was not like the black warships. It was smaller, sleek, white with gold markings. It landed without force, gently settling on a peaceful hill once covered in craters. The hatch opened. A single human stepped out. She looked young, calm, wearing simple clothes, not armor, no weapons. She raised one hand and spoke in clear, basic Galactic. I come alone. The news spread like wildfire. The first human to appear since the 3-hour war. She called herself Solon. She said nothing about the war, the ships, or the towers. She only asked one question. Will you choose peace now, or must we return? The councils of both empires gathered in secret. They argued. Some still wanted power. Some still wanted revenge. But most finally understood. Humanity had shown what they could do. Now they were giving a second chance. Solon met with leaders, one by one. She never raised her voice, never threatened. But her eyes. Her eyes held the weight of something ancient, something that had seen too much war. In one last meeting, she stood before both empires' top leaders. The air was heavy, the room silent. She looked at them and said, "We are not your enemies, but we are your mirror. What you do next will decide what we become to you." Then she left. The white ship rose into the sky and disappeared without a sound, and the towers remained. Now the galaxy knew. The war was over, but the test had begun, and something, was still watching. The galaxy was no longer at war, but peace didn't come easily. Old wounds still burned. Soldiers had nothing to fight. War leaders were lost without their fleets. For centuries, both the Cracks and Velatari had lived only for battle. Now they had to learn something new: how to live without war. Across dozens of worlds, strange things began to happen. In a Velatari capital school, a history book rewrote itself overnight. The old chapters that praised war and conquest were gone, replaced with images of burned planets, destroyed homes, and silent black ships watching from the stars. No one knew how it happened. The headmaster tried to delete the files, but the new version kept returning. On a Cracks world once known for building weapons, an engineer discovered something strange. The machines in his factory refused to restart, not because they were broken, but because they had changed. When he connected his console, the message was simple: no more death. He tried to force the system. The machines shut down completely. The message came again: choose again. He sat in the dark, hands shaking. For the first time in his life, he asked himself what else he could build. In the neutral zones, where survivors from both sides lived, things were changing faster. Cracks and Velatari, who once fought, now built houses together. They shared food, traded tools, and sat under the stars wondering what the humans had truly become. The Black Towers remained silent, but active. They pulsed in rhythm, always the same beat. Some scholars believed it was counting time. Others thought it was a signal. One bold scientist placed a hand on the tower and asked aloud, "What are you waiting for?" The tower replied, "Not in sound, not in light, but in thought." He collapsed, eyes wide, mind flooded with images, visions of Earth, of human wars, of fire, ash, peace, and betrayal, of a planet that had once burned itself nearly to death and learned to rebuild. When he awoke, he whispered, "They are not powerful because of their weapons. They are powerful because they survived themselves." In one Velatari city, a council leader asked a question on live broadcast: "What do the humans want from us now?" The answer came not through speech, but through action. That night, the stars above the city blinked into new shapes. Constellations rearranged themselves, forming a message in ancient galactic script: "Become better than who you were." People began to talk. Was this a second chance? A test? Or a warning before something worse? Far beyond the core systems, on a forgotten moon, a group of ex-soldiers from both sides had built a hidden base. Angry, bitter, they planned to rise again, to strike back at the humans with stolen tech. They launched a test attack, a drone carrying old plasma bombs aimed at one of the Black Towers. The moment the drone crossed the tower's airspace, it vanished. Not exploded, vanished. Then every member of the rebel cell received a single image on their comm screens. Their own faces, but older, cold, alone, surrounded by ruins. Below the image were 3 words: "This is you." None of them spoke again. Slowly, both empires began to change, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Cracks generals turned their fleets into exploration ships. Velatari war. Factories were redesigned to build homes, farms, and schools. Peacekeepers, once soldiers, now guarded roads, not borders. In the middle of all this, one message came from the last Black Tower that had appeared. This time it spoke through every screen, speaker, and device in the galaxy. A simple sentence: "You were not punished. You were given a mirror." It was signed with a symbol, Two hands, one reaching down, the other reaching up. The same symbol found on old Earth ruins from centuries ago. No one could deny it now. Humanity had changed, and now they were changing everyone else. Not by force, not by ruling, but by making the galaxy face what it had become, and what it could still become. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, deep in the cold dark, where the human fleet waited, in silence a voice finally spoke, and they are learning. But no one could tell if it was hope or a warning. The galaxy had changed. Where there had once been fire and war, now there was quiet. Not peace, at least not yet, but a silence full of thought. A silence where leaders paused before giving orders, where soldiers stopped to ask why, where children grew up without learning to hate their neighbors. And still the black towers stood. They had become part of the sky, part of the cities. People walked past them, eyes lowered, wondering if today would be the day they spoke again. But for weeks nothing happened, until one day, every tower lit up. At the exact same moment, across every world, every station, every outpost touched by the war. People gathered in silence. Families held hands. Old enemies stood side by side. They waited. Then, from each tower, a beam of light shot into the sky, not as a weapon, but as a message. Above each world, the same image appeared in the stars. Earth, blue and white, beautiful and distant, a reminder of where this all began. And then, the final message came. It was not a voice, not a face, but something deeper, something felt inside every mind. We were like you. The message showed flashes of Earth's history: war, greed, fire, division. The same mistakes the galaxy had made, humans had once made too. For thousands of years, humanity had nearly destroyed itself, again and again. But then came change. People learned, fought their own darkness, fought not each other, but what was inside them. And when they finally rose again, it was not to conquer, but to protect. The message continued. We did not come to rule. We came to warn. Images flashed of what could have happened: burned planets, broken stars, empty cities. A galaxy that had almost died under its own pride. Then new images. What could still happen? Rebuilt worlds, shared cities, children of different species laughing together, science and song replacing guns and walls. You still have a choice. And with that, the towers began to vanish, one by one, turning to dust, fading into the wind. The last tower to disappear was the one on the moon where the war had ended. It stayed just a little longer, watching, waiting. Then it too was gone. But the message remained, not in the stars, not on screens, in the people. The Crack's dominion and Velatari ascendancy no longer called themselves empires. They became something new. Together they formed the Unity Accord, a council where every voice was heard, a place where human envoys were invited, not to command, but to guide. And humanity? They didn't return with warships. They sent teachers, doctors, builders. They shared what they had learned: how to build without taking, how to grow without conquering. And still they never said how powerful they truly were. Because the truth was simple. The real power of humanity was not in their weapons. It was in their ability to change, to survive their worst selves, to rise again, not above others, but beside them. Years later, children in both Cracks and Velatari schools would ask the same question. Why did the humans stop the war in only 3 hours? And their teachers would smile and answer, because they had already fought the hardest war of all, the one inside themselves, and they won. So now, it was the galaxy's turn to choose what came next.